So I was asked how I managed to try and fit a jig to this 10-inch Ryobi table saw. And I did not film myself working on most of this, but I can take you through it so you know what to do and what mistakes to avoid. First of all, we've only got the one miter slot here. In addition, I don't know if you can see, right here, there used to be these little wings going out. So I had to use that file and ground those down, that side, that side, that side, 4 in total, in order to get a piece to actually glide. Oh boy. Glide. There we go, that's much better. To glide in there. Now, the problem is, that's the only miter slot. So as you can see, there's only the one, and what I ended up having to do was attach a 2x4 here and there. I don't know if you can see on my jig, it's not completed yet. But I've got two 2x4s that is going to slide right next to. The problem is, just using the 2x4s, I found that I had a good bit of slop. Wiggling it from that end to that end, back and forth, I was noticing about a 1/4 inch of movement. And that was just no good. So while originally I wasn't going to use the miter slot, I did have to do that. I'll be attaching this. Of course, it's not going to be this thick. It's a very, very shallow miter saw slot. Only about, oh goodness, 5/16 deep. So it's not going to add a whole lot of stability, but it'll add some, and I'm hoping it's enough to get some consistent cuts going. I don't know if it's going to work or not. We'll see. The other piece to watch out for is the fact that this table, it does not come down at a 90-degree angle. Rather, it comes out just like 5 degrees or so. So what, 95 degrees. And I didn't notice this originally because I was so happy that these turned out to be perpendicular on top. And I was so thrilled with that I thought, oh, surely nothing else could go wrong. But it did. So with these 2x4s here, I didn't notice this problem initially. It wasn't until I actually got to building the jig that I noticed it wasn't setting down at a nice 90 degrees. So I used the saw, adjusted it for 5 or so degrees. You're obviously going to want to measure this yourself for your saw. And set it off. So you can see it's not at a perfect... No, you don't. Not at a perfect 90 degrees. But it still works. So if I had to do it again, and I may still do this, these 2x4s, I'd make sure that the top was cut so that it was perfectly flush, because as it stands, it is flush with the table, but the problem is it is just the very edge that is flush with the table. And if we were to look, let's see here, you can see there's a little bit of a gap there. Okay, actually, it's not as flush as I had hoped to begin with. All right, I am doing it over. In addition, I've got, when it comes to attaching these 2x4s, 6 half-inch bolts, about, I don't know, 2 inches, 2.5 inches long, right here, here, and here. And before you drill through, you're going to want to make sure that you check the inside, because there are some little pieces of metal jutting out in order to give the table a little more rigidity. So you have to watch out for that. But I think it's getting pretty close. The white stuff here, and that was just some garbage I picked up from a print shop. They were making posters, they had thrown it out, and it was a nice, slick surface. Originally I was going to use it to build an indoor grow tent of sorts, and I figured this white color would reflect the light back pretty well. But I found another use for it. I didn't put it on the edge because I was hoping it would be just enough to fill that in there, but boy, that did not happen. So ultimately, with this jig, you're going to have something like, I have not trimmed the ends yet. You're going to have something like that. Obviously, it's only going to come out to right about there. So it's going to be relatively thin. But I'm hoping that gives it enough rigidity, gets rid of the slop, so that I can get this thing working. I know they say buyer beware, but I hate waste. I hate the idea of getting rid of this table, because otherwise it works. It works well. The angle adjusts well. The fence there, it does okay. The miter, though, is garbage. And I did experiment with using this miter. I was hoping to attach it to the jig, but the problem is the included miter, it wobbles around in here quite a bit. Whereas this little wood thing that I just built after sanding everything down, grinding everything down, has a little bit of movement, sure, but nowhere near to the degree of what was in there originally. So that's how I did it. 2x4 bolted in, drilled in. Before I drilled in, then a couple other 2x4s. You make sure you got the right angle to make it perfectly flush. And then you're still going to use this single miter slot. Cut that down to fit. And obviously I'm going to cut it about there. And it's just the usual jig construction from there. No need to get too fancy with it. But again, I hate waste. I hate the idea of throwing this thing away, because, boy, it works otherwise very well, and it would just be a waste.